r/scare stories. Posted BYU Mad Hatter 006. Gold bless up. Take a walk with me. I want to chat with you. I want to tell you how I got away with murder. Do you love your family? Do you really? Think about it. Take a moment and walk with me. Family is forever. Family is a group of people that are supposed to love, guide, and protect you. So people have said. Family is bound to you for eternity by blood. With how many people that had to come together to make you, just you. You're drowning in blood, sweetie. And so am I. My family was on a different level of fucked up. My father was a car salesman who got high off of crack cocaine and screwed his co-worker. Smiling in the faces of his neighbors who whisper about his sexuality behind his back, while he's thinking he has everyone fooled. Idiot. My mother wasn't innocent. In fact, she was worse than my dad. To everyone else, she was the unassuming second-grade teacher, who went to church every Sunday and attended a book club with her friends. Fucking liar. She was horrible. A righteous bitch who would get friendly with her brother after her husband went to sleep. Beat me with her precious brown leather Bible in hand whenever I took too long doing the dishes. She would lock me in the basement, for hours and hours. She once left me in there from the crack of dawn to the middle of the night, and when she let me out she smiled in my face and told me, "I honestly forgot you were there." I begged for food but she told me it was too late to cook and she shouldn't have to waste food on me. Waste. My older brother got the better treatment from my family. My father and mother didn't beat him like they would beat me. They didn't starve him like they would starve me. He stayed in his room on his computer, shirtless sometimes while he talked smoothly to some man or woman on the other side of his camera. The money he got for his cam sessions got him weed, white rum, and a car that he didn't have the license for. Bought second-hand from a friend from somewhere in Chicago. Regardless of the law, he would take it out to practice. He didn't care for my curled up, screaming, and scared self who he threw into the trunk of his car. He would drive around for hours and speed up when he saw a speed bump in the road. Then laugh as he heard me cry in pain. That's how I broke my arm. This was all before I turned 7. Just so you have a better image of how messed up this story gets. Are you ready? It was a cool Tuesday afternoon. My backyard was covered in leaves. Orange, yellow, red. I had just turned 15 and it was the middle of autumn. I was alone as I sat on the back porch steps. Not just alone on the steps, but there was no one else home. It was so peaceful. The kind of peace you wish would never go away. But good things never last long, do they? I could hear my mother's heels clicking up the sidewalk as she got to the house. Her loud laughter let me know that she was on the phone. And she only ever genuinely liked talking to one person on the phone, my uncle. With her keys jingling in the lock, it was such a smooth transition for me to close the back door and hop up to my room. My house had no pictures. The walls weren't ever decorated with anything and it always smelled of something foul. No one in this house ever thought to make memories. Everyone was too busy trying to forget. But forget what? It's not like they've been suffering. I've been the lightning rod for them for as long as I've been breathing. But there is no pity for me. Just abuse. Passing my brother's room, it now had the permanent smell of weed and burnt rubber. I made sure to move quickly and quietly when I passed his room. His attention on me was never good, as I've learned over the years. How do you explain to someone that you've created tactics to move around your house, just so you won't have to be noticed by your family? All for the sake of your own safety, your life. How do you explain that? You can't. Or at least that's what you're taught when you're young. Your mother scolding you for tattling and telling you to keep your mouth shut. Whatever happens in the family stays in the family. Snitches get stitches, my brother would say. I hated my brother. I would always have to escape to my room whenever they came home. I would always have to hide, listening carefully at the door for anyone in the hall so I could run to the bathroom without being noticed. Watching which floorboard I stepped on at night on my way to the kitchen, sleeping with my alarm clock under my pillow to get an earlier start so I could avoid everyone else. Taking showers at the break of dawn where everyone was still too deep in sleep to be disturbed by the sound of spraying water. When they were home, there was no such thing as peace. But I will get to the point. That Tuesday night was the night that my worldview changed entirely. Humans are naturally wired for survival. You do what you must do to keep breathing. But you can only handle so much before you snap. My mother had decided to throw a party. It started from the middle of the afternoon and went on late into the night. My father, mother, and brother all sat in the living room with our neighbors, and looking at them, you could almost trick yourself into believing they were perfectly normal. They laughed, smiling politely, and entertained their guests as everyone drank and ate gross goat cheese on saltine crackers. But of course I knew better. My father wasn't fooling anyone with that long sleeve he was wearing. He was trying to hide the point of entry. All while looking sleep-deprived and wayfish. The veins at the sides of his forehead were bulging with the need to run to the bathroom and just do one more line. To get through the evening and I'll quit. My mother's liver was giving out. She was once skinny with gentle curves. Like a supermodel if she twisted her body in the mirror long enough to fool herself. Now she was as bloated as a whale. None of her clothes no longer fit and she had to go out and buy a new wardrobe. My uncle sitting next to her, but he entertained her neighbor from next door instead. Laughing flirtatiously and laying his hand on her knee. Our neighbor flirted back with him. Tossing her hair over her shoulder and batting her lashes. Our neighbor was married to a Marine. And my brother. Sitting with his friends all drinking beer and talking as if they had anything to talk about. None of them had jobs, none of them had families to take care of. None of them had shit to do with their lives except mooch off their parents. They could only talk about memories from high school, which quickly got them bored. Then they were reduced to only sitting in silence while everyone else talked to them about their own lives. I sat in my room. Avoiding them all. Those idiots, sadists, adulterers and liars. Every one of them is the next person's paramour in one way or another. By the time the party had died it was 12 o'clock. I knew it wouldn't be a good night based on how hard my mother stomped up the steps. I saw from my window, my uncle escaping to my neighbor's house. His hand on her ass as she giggled drunkenly. My mother has fell out of favor. Funny. She screamed my name and demanded that I come and clean up her mess. Moving down the hall to my room. It was like a horror movie. Her slow steps moving closer and closer to my door. My arms folded over the windowsill as I took in the cold night air. I can still remember the feel of the wind on my face. My door was thrown open by my mother. Her long hair hanging in front of her face as she desperately onto her wine glass. She stumbled and swayed in the doorway. Her eyes couldn't even find me. She yelled for me to come down and clean up her mess again. My brother yelling from his room for her to shut up. As I looked at her, as I watched her, I got this strange feeling. A feeling that could only be described as sadistic. But also empty at the same time. It was like a dying candle in the wind. A wind that just kept on coming. Her eyes found mine and she stumbled into the room as she took a sip from her wine glass. She called my name and when I didn't respond, that began an onslaught of insults and threats. The same insults and threats that I have heard for all of the time I had been under her care. It wasn't anything new. Her mocking, taunting, vicious insults were nothing new to me anymore. The wind stopped, and the light on the candle flickered back to life. With plenty of wax left. It was like a wave of clean fresh water was thrown on me. I stood up, my eyes scanning her blubbery form from her heel to the crown of her head. She did just the same. Mocking me as the wine in her glass sloshed around, provoking me with her words. My brother screamed from his room for both of us to be quiet. Fine. I'll make her be quiet. I lunges quickly pushing her onto the floor. Her size betrayed her, she was too big now to move quickly. She struggled to stand as I calmly walked to my bedroom door and locked it. Her wine glass had fell out of her hand, and the cup broke. The smell of Riesling coated the dull brown carpet, mixing in evenly with the foul smell of the house. One tall shard of glass laid near my feet. I picked it up and made my way over to my mother. The candle was burning bright now that the wind had finally stopped. An easy slit across her throat prevented her from screaming too. The shard cut my own fingers as I made myself into a butcher for my pig of a mother. I had felt this wave of ease come over me as I stood over her now mutilated body. I heard my brother's door open. With every step he took to get to my room, memories flashed behind my eyelids. His abuse and torment, his cruelty. Every step brought a new memory back and soon enough he was banging at my door. There weren't enough steps to match how many times he'd broken my arm, or fractured my ribs. There weren't enough steps to match how many hours a day I'd spent in the darkness of his trunk. I'd remember the summer, in the darkness, him zooming over a speed bump, me hitting my head and blacking out. He threw me on the front lawn when we got home. Did even bother to take me inside, but instead left me under the bleeding hot sun, watching as my mother's body emptied out her blood. Soaking into the carpet as her face is fitted perfectly into a look of pain and fear. Strangely enough it's the prettiest she's ever looked. My brother continued to bang on the door. Banging continuously and demanded that I open the door. So I did. And I delivered the same gruesome death to him too. A slit across his throat, but instead of cutting him open I beat him until every bone I could get to was broken. stomping on his arms and legs hard with my foot. I'd taken a page from his book and aimed for the most vital areas. The wind stayed down. I dragged the shard of glass on the wall, cutting into the dirty blue wallpaper. Then I noticed something. I didn't hear my father come up the steps. Nor did he complain about the noise my mother was making. I searched house for him, just to see if he was even home. Passing through the living room that was messy with cheap wine and gross snacks. Pillows thrown about and furniture moved across the room to make space for a dance area. I saw the guest bathroom light on. The door was cracked open and I could see a shadow. I got close to the bathroom and saw the dirty brown loafers my father wore. Then his legs that were stretched out in front of him that almost peeked out the door. Pushing open the door, I saw his body laying against the sink. A lighter sat by his bent knee, a burned spoon in one hand, and a syringe still jammed into his left arm. His tie was laying crumpled up next to the lighter. And he wasn't breathing. It was bound to happen sooner or later. How convenient that it should be now. I left him there. The state of his own demise should left alone. It's the only thing he had in his final moments. Weakness and addiction. I made my way out the open back door, kicking it closed with my foot. Walking around the side of the house as I wiped off my fingerprints from the shard of glass. I made my way over to the neighbor's house. She didn't even have the decency to close her living room curtains. My uncle pumping himself into her as she had her legs spread open on either side of her husband's recliner. If only she knew where this pig had stuck his cock into. I threw the shard of glass into her rose bushes and continued on down the sidewalk. I'm sure you're wondering now what happened. Did the police find me? Where did I run to? Do I feel guilty, sweetheart? It made national news. It was everywhere. A brother had killed his sister and her entire family after a night of partying with her neighbors. The weapon was found in the rose bushes of a neighbor of his sister's just across the street from the house they were murdered in. Both their faces were plastered on the 5 o'clock news. He pled his innocence, but texts between him and his sister were leaked and their incestuous relationship was revealed to the public. The neighbor wasn't off the hook either. The police guessed he killed them out of rage and jealousy sometime after the party, and went to go make a victim of the adulterous neighbor lady. It's amazing how easily people can be fooled. It's also amazing how easily someone can obtain a fake ID, and a fake birth certificate, and a fake passport. Cutting hair is easy as well. Isn't that what people do anyways when they want to feel like a new person? Now for the last question. Do I feel guilty? No. Absolutely not. In fact, during the whole ordeal, from pushing my mother to the floor, to walking off into the night, the only thing I could feel was relief. It's the feeling of being raised in a cage and then finally breaking free. Sweet, sweet freedom. So no. I don't feel the slightest bit guilty. Never even for the neighbor lady who made a stupid decision and cheated with the wrong man. I do not feel guilty. Besides, if you had the chance to kill your demons, I'm sure you would do the same. You're already drowning in blood. What's the difference if you spill more?